Republican Party, the MAGA, who cheered for him when he was up on stage during the election, now will come out at town halls with Republican senators and congressmen and say, what is he doing there? Why can't we bring this guy that was falsely deported back? It's the first time I've ever heard a MAGA say to bring back someone who was deported. But it's just so blatant that people are standing up. But they're standing by him because that sunk cost fallacy is in effect, right? Sunk cost fallacy, the more you put into something, the more you hold on to it, even when things say you should step out.
You want what do they call it? Like adrenaline of it.
Yeah, the adrenaline, but also it's your investment. It may not be money, but it actually is.
It is money.
Because people are losing their savings. They're not able to retire. And they're taking it up to say, as a patriotic American, I'm going to take this hit for America. And it's anything but. They're taking the hit.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
Like we said, we're going to speak about Elon Musk in the second segment. And I think you remember when he goes to this parade and he has like an axe and he's saying, I am like dark MAGA. I'm MAGA all in. And every day on Twitter, he's saying we are cutting these hundreds of billions of dollars. We are cutting this much. There's been a bit of pushback that these numbers
we used to say fuzzy math. It's fuzzy math.
I am trying to find the right language, but let's use your language. Fuzzy math.
Fuzzy math. A nice way to say they're wrong. Just as
inflated.
Very much inflated, and it improves their standing, and look that they're really achieving their goal. But sometimes it adds up to more people than are in the U.S. You just can't, right? You can't deny the math. But the approach, despite Elon Musk and his ability to create AI and a platform called Grok, which is a very popular AI system, which could have easily let the administration selectively choose who to cut and not to just take a blunt instrument and just whack it off, because that's forced them to go back and rehire. And some of those people aren't rehireable. So then that creates
a problem.
Yeah. So, the numbers have never been there. The numbers that definitely have gone down are related to Elon's income and the profitability, because his brand has been, the Tesla has been decimated. Most of the people that buy Teslas are Democrats, but people are so put off. And the Republican Party, the MAGA, who cheered for him when he was up on stage during the election, now will come out at town halls with Republican senators and congressmen and say, what is he doing there? Why can't we bring this guy that was falsely deported back? It's the first time I've ever heard a MAGA say to bring back someone who was deported. But it's just so blatant that people are standing up. But they're standing by him because that sunk cost fallacy is in effect, right? Sunk cost fallacy, the more you put into something, the more you hold on to it, even when things say you should step out.
You want what do they call it? Like adrenaline of it.
Yeah, the adrenaline, but also it's your investment. It may not be money, but it actually is.
It is money.
Because people are losing their savings. They're not able to retire. And they're taking it up to say, as a patriotic American, I'm going to take this hit for America. And it's anything but. They're taking the hit. Trump has not been catering to his base as he did in his first term. Whether he believes this will be his final term or not, he has not been feeding and caring for his base. So he's lost a portion. But there's still enough, and in the critical districts that hold the congressmen and women and the senators loyal to him, because it's not so much angering Trump, it's angering the voters who elect you. Or, as Elon promised, if Congress and Senate members didn't follow along, that he would run candidates against them. So if the citizens didn't, if the voters didn't go against you, then I'll make sure there's a candidate that will compete and beat you in the next election. So these are powerful threats, and that's usually all they have to be. But, there's plenty of talk of, of Musk stepping away. I believe that to be true. I think the thrill is gone, and his 250 million tokens have been spent, so to speak. So he's
speaking about the 250 million. That was quite a lot of money he injected into the election.
Not much for him.
Not much for him.
Not much for him. And what he got in the form of data in those early days, it wasn't about cutting anything for him. It was about getting into as many agencies as possible and getting that information.
So for you think it was a business decision on his end?
It was. I think in the long term, although he's lost hundreds of billions, I mean, we may not understand what that means, but I would imagine after 100 billion, there's really not like an exclusive club you get into. There's no designer clothes that are only for 100 billionaires.
Yeah, I know,
There's nothing special out there. So this turns him to politics as the only other way
accessing power or accessing the power.
But he could have accessed any kind of power he wanted. He was loved. He had a cult following for Tesla and for the rockets. And now it's all but faded because people found out it wasn't him and Tesla. It was a lot of government contracts that got those rockets into space. And, that image of him doing everything on his own has been shattered. So the legacy, his own legacy, has been ruined. But what happens now with all that data, not only him, but all the others that have, the tech giants that have partnered with Trump. Only recently, you may have heard the creator of Amazon was going to put notices on its different items to say this is how much it costs, and this will be the tariff tax that you'll be paying. And boy, Mr. Trump didn't like that at all. And this is after Jeff Bezos, agreed to pay Melania Trump $40 million for her documentary. I don't know if you've heard of the Earth series by the BBC that had these beautiful that cost $2 million to make. So it was clearly an effort to, persuade right before this idea, because at the end of the day, Amazon has to make money. And if tariffs impact the amount of Chinese goods it can get in to sell cheap.
Absolutely.
I mean, self-interest comes up pretty quick. There's not a loyalty to Trump for the person.
Yeah.
It's a loyalty to
Jeff
the self.
Is loyal to the dollar.
He's loyal to the dollars. And Musk is as well. But nobody got access like Musk. Nobody was able to dig into our
It was the biggest win of the election.
Absolutely. And I don't even think Donald Trump knows the extent to which.
Do you think Musk has more power than Trump at the moment? Over, say,
not in public opinion, not in a way, but he moves markets. I don't know how much the tariff strategy was really thought through, but there had to be an idea that the market would drop. Again, we don't know about the insider trading that happened, but that's just sort of minor. It's the value of the dollar. It's our reputation globally that's just been decimated. Now, sure, a Democrat in power, if Trump's finally gone, fades into the sunset, if that happens, our allies will come back and just consider this a blip, a horrible, horrible thing. But there's compounded interest on all of those losses that we've had. There were estimates that the Iraq War, was $1 trillion. Cost $1 trillion, right? But if you actually look at the costs of medical bills and the soldiers that were injured and the benefits that have to continue after the war, it's $7 trillion, $8 trillion. So that's a big deal, this tariff thing. And, the recent comments about, well, maybe your daughter won't get 30 Barbie dolls. What daughter has 30 Barbie dolls? So he's completely out of touch, but he maintains that core support. The sunk cost fallacy is strong. It's a very powerful thing. And my family has succumbed to it. I have a lot of family members that things haven't been the same since Trump took over. Got into office. And that's years and years now. So personally, I've been impacted. Thankfully, I live in Uganda and eggs are affordable. But, my fellow Americans are under a great deal of strain, and there's nothing they can really do about it.
Absolutely. I have read about the different mechanisms of regulating money in elections in the United States. And are there people who donate as much as Elon donates to elections in the past? Maybe the Democrats similarly.
There's always an over amount of influence due to an act that escapes me now. I think it's Americans United, which makes no sense why it was called that, but it allows corporations to be to be able to contribute and above the $2,000 per person limit, because they are able to collectively, and the fuzzy math again, vote according to their, not just employees, but their beneficiaries of their work and customers and whatever. So it comes to an incredible amount. So pharma. So big
say
pharma,
if Microsoft has like 1 million customers.
Right. It could have 1 million times 2,000. I don't know the exact math of how it's structured, but it gives corporations an inordinate amount of power. And that was a Republican design bill, because for the last 50, 60 years, Republicans have been waning. Their support has been just not there. America's become a moderate society, and moderate to liberal, not moderate to conservative. Yeah. So the Republicans their only chance was to play with the system. So by adjusting where the boundaries are for electoral districts, they flooded the local government with Republicans, and that's a very good strategy. There was a guy called Ralph Reed years and years ago that had a very good strategy of filling the lower ranks from garbage chairman to the rescue, whatever, the lowest positions of elected government, to get young Republicans in there. So when the time came, and young Christian Republicans, so when the time came, they had the power, and it worked. So that model has done very well. Then corporations, Republicans have typically gone after the big dollars. So, and this is male candidates in general will go after the $2,000 check, where Democrats would go after, and women would go after the $5 at a time, which is a much more democratic way to go about things, if you ask me. And studies have shown, I did one of my first as an intern with the National Women's Political Caucus, we were looking at campaign finance reform and how women would be disenfranchised. But every way we ran the numbers, women were still winning if they ran. But they raise money in $5 increments. So they're chained to their desk making phone calls while the men can be on campaign stops. Well, no, the men would get these $2,000 checks, but it only counts for one vote at that time.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas women would get $5, but they would tell 5 of their friends. So on election day, it would pay off.
I get you.
There's nothing against us, against women in this campaign finance. But then came the new ruling that corporations could fund, and pharma is a big one. And if you want to run big pharma, if you want an automobile industry and all of these things, businesses that don't even exist in a state, but that
they can still fund a candidate in that state.
And they'll fund Democrats and Republicans, to cover their bets. So that amount of money. They
fund both to hedge their bet. Wow.
Donald Trump was famous for it. Before he got really into politics, he funded Democrats mostly. But he would also fund Republicans.
What was he up to? He had a business empire. He wanted favors.
I really don't know why he was a Democrat. I think the Republicans, as a business person, he would be, but he wasn't a good business person. So maybe he needed the courts' help of the Democrats. I don't know. But, the transactional nature of the presidency. So anyway, this is one thing. If you could, if a Democrat came into power in that 100 days, and we've talked about the 100 days, but what does that 100 days really mean? Well, that is a courtesy that is offered the incoming president to have their policy. They were voted by the people, so we're going to stand back and let this. But the Democrats couldn't hold 100 days. My Lord, what he did in the first 5. So it's by breaking these traditions and these customs that have been in place in America and many countries for hundreds of years.
Yep.
And to come in and say, oh, well, there's nothing stating that I have to do this, so I'm just not going to do it. So that can be deportations, that can be firing USAID employees or shutting down an agency, even though the rules state that Congress has to approve
that decision. Yeah.
They create agencies and they dismantle, and he just takes that power. But there's no mechanism to say no, except the courts, and the courts he also doesn't have to listen to. So he learned very quick in his first term of all these things that made it difficult for him to work within the system.
So the second time,
just ignore everything.
He's crazy.
Yeah. And, he didn't have to resort to threats and intimidation until things started to slow around the 60th day or so.
Oh, yeah. Even I think he's quite interested in his, what do you call them? And how the public sees him. So when there was a lot of backlash.
Public opinion. Absolutely.
Yeah, public opinion.
Yeah, he needs that.
Word right.
The accolades, because eventually it does get to his base, but it's just his nature. He's always been in the media.
For what? He doesn't want to have a bad time in the media. Just to finish the conversation on the campaign reforms.
Yeah.
So what was the logic of the Republicans? We're saying they should give such a huge voice to corporations.
Because the Republicans are for what was called trickle-down economics. Okay. Support the big corporations. They make a profit. They're able to hire more, and that improves the economy.
Puts more money in the American
But it's been proven not to work. More money to the companies just means they make more money. Remember the
CEO makes more money.
Right. The crash of the stock market and all of these banks, Lehman Brothers and these huge banks getting bailed out. They were able to return that money with interest within a few months. That's how much they can make. So when you have the banks, you have the power. So the reason for this legal maneuver is that Republicans knew they could get those 2,000. They could go beyond that and get 100,000, 200,000, 1 million contributed. So you steadily saw the cost of a campaign go from 100,000 to 100 million. A California gubernatorial race or a Senate race costs almost as much as the presidency in the amount of television advertisement. Now there's money, there's jobs in campaigns, right? There's polling and survey and all these are jobs that put food on the table. But what it does to democracy is, guarantees that nobody that's in Congress or the Senate is there unless they're either independently wealthy or they took
have a
money.
rich friend, yeah.
They took money from special interests.
So as a result, the Congress is pretty much a group of representatives of the corporate lobby.
Indirectly. They can only go so far to eliminate this or that. But as I said,
So
the
to
first
what extent does that corporate
influence
get into the Congress or House of Representatives?
The lobbying.
Does it get into the budget, like the annual budget?
Lord. It's I worked on a congressional campaign for a wonderful candidate who's retiring, unfortunately, Jan Schakowsky, and I could go on with stories, but the way she was elected was very different, and her ability to not take special interest money gave her a power to defy
corporate interest
and to vote against them. Yeah. She didn't have to worry about getting their investments because she never took it. So you have 100 days to get something through. Obama got health care, right?
Oh yeah, Obamacare.
And he barely, by the skin of his teeth, he got it. But there were discussions that he had a choice to change campaign finance and change the ruling to make politics fair, to eliminate what's called gerrymandering, the division of districts. Could have done these things, but made a choice that healthcare is more important. So unfortunately, it was still watered down, but yeah, so that's the first 100 days. Then there's 100 other customs that are not written down, that the executive order, another good graph for your show would be the number of executive orders that you mentioned in your opening.
143.
And how it just blows away any comparing them. What is an executive order really? It's a promise to do something. It's not action. That requires law. That requires Congress. But there's nothing that stops him from saying, you are fired. A famous catchphrase of his. You are fired.
I think I like this.
There's no one for someone to go, wait, but you don't have the power to do that. Well, that's the courts. And he's already infected the courts. So he got, in 100 days,
he has wielded a lot of power.
Yeah, he's
maybe as we close, I don't know what you see. They say maybe the next 300 days, the next years, the next... How it's going to be like as we wind down the podcast. Yeah, sure.
I would say this. The speed with which he's gone, the commitments he's made, he will either have a heart attack, there will be a coup, because the only thing to save America are the men and women of the military that pledged an oath to uphold the Constitution. And if that is demonstrably being broken, they are the only shot we have, is a proper coup. I don't see how he makes it all the way to finish his term. It's just the human body can only last so much.
With
the
this
frenetic
pace.
And people will get just exhausted with all of the controversy.
The drama,
it's already
drama.
enough.
Yeah, it's just in 100 days. It seems like 3 years. You say.
Yeah. So what is it? What does it look like when Trump loses steam? When MAGA disappears because he's ignored them too long?
When he no longer has the eyes, the public opinion.
Well, then he's got AI and the ramifications of a dictatorial entity. If they are able to grasp the potential of AI, and with someone like Elon as a friend, Elon, you maintain full control, and it's impossible to take it away. Might be a big conversation for another time.
Which I think we should have.
But the convergence of AI and leadership like Donald Trump is frightening, what it could do. And as we talked earlier, the other right-wing leadership that's growing around the world, because they see what they can do by disrupting tradition.
So he has provided a precedence for what a right-winger leader can do. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for
Pleasure to be here.
These thoughts. To our audience, it was a pleasure having you as we did our commentary on Trump's first 100 days as a policy digest. We hope that you enjoyed the content, and see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.